Thank you so much for joining us. My name is May Home HaDuong, and I'm the director of the UCLA Film and Television Archive. Before I start, as a land-grant institution, it's important for UCLA to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. We're humbled to do work in this community. I also want everyone to know that this event is being live captioned, so you can turn those on using the closed caption button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Welcome to the UCLA Film and Television Archive on Zoom. We're thrilled to have you join us today to hear more about the archive, our work, our mission, our goals, and how you can support these efforts. An investment in the archive is an investment in the deeply meaningful work of protecting moving images as part of our cultural memory. The UCLA Film and Television Archive rescues, preserves, and showcases moving images, including newsreels, independent cinema, landmark television, and Hollywood features. Your commitment to this work has a direct impact on moving image culture, on students, scholars, and audiences, past, present, and future. On behalf of all of the dedicated staff at the archive, thank you. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm excited to return to UCLA, where as a graduate student, I found an environment that fostered space for learning, curiosity, and growth. After graduating from UCLA some years ago, I served as a project manager for the Outfest UCLA Legacy Project for LGBTQ moving image preservation, a collaboration between Outfest and UCLA. And until just a few months ago, I left the Academy Film Archive, where I served for 13 years in the Access Department, overseeing access to the archives collection. Returning to UCLA has been a lifelong dream, and I'm thrilled to join a talented group of experts and practitioners. I want to thank the entire staff at the archive for bringing their passion, ingenuity, deep knowledge, and commitment to their work. Their warm welcome has meant everything to me. Before you get to meet a few of them, let me first share with you about today's presentation. I'll start with giving a broad overview of the archive's work, share space with my colleagues, and then we'll close with time for a Q&A session at the end. By the way, if you have questions for me or my colleagues, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. A new home has many meanings. In October of 2019, the archive found a new institutional home in the UCLA library. We're excited to align the second largest repository of motion picture and broadcast programming in the US with the library's world-class archival and scholarly collections. Our librarians help faculty and students use our collections every day, and we're leveraging this expertise to better integrate our collection, the archives collection, with this incredible rich holdings in teaching and learning. The archive has a home at the Powell Library, where the Archive Research and Study Center is home for, where you'll hear more about that later today. Nearly all of our moving image collections reside at the Packard Humanities Institute's STOA. We're grateful to our collaborators and partners at the Packard Humanities Institute and to David Packard for allowing us to call this space our home. After near 4-month closure, we reopened on March 1st with staff focusing on intake of materials, access to the collections through our digital lab, and preservation. Working from home, staff have been active in our virtual screening room, which you'll hear more about soon, transcription projects, and cataloging work. These have been difficult times for everyone, but the institutional changes and economic challenges have surfaced important work for the archive. We've taken stock of our goals, begun integrating deeply with the library, and build plans for the future. And the future feels bright. But we are also here in the present. And in this moment of great shifts and changes, I want to affirm the archive's deep commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. We value the voices of our communities, the scholars we serve, the cultural producers amongst us, the researchers, and the scholars. This work is rooted in service, and we do an injustice to this calling as archivists if we do not take time to question, listen, act, and transform. Part of this process is in our strategic work. We've identified key areas of service that are at the core of the archive's mission. We'll discuss them more deeply and share some moving images with you today. Before I give the floor to Mark, Todd, and Maya, I'll cover these areas. First, the most present to many of us is our service to the public. Through screenings, our website, and through social media, we engage with users from all over the world. From the best seat in the house to the best seat in your home, we seek to engage all users. Our programming and online collection gives unique windows into history, filmmaking, and culture. We serve the present and the future, and it goes without saying, by this very nature of this work, we are serving the past. To that end, we are literally in a race against time to save the film, television, and newsreel collections in our collections. This is time-consuming and technical work and greatly rewarding. You'll hear and see why soon. And finally, but not exclusively, we serve research and education, bringing moving images to the foreground as primary research material for research and study. We are embarking on a period of building a robust digital infrastructure, which will make it possible for more students and classes to use archive materials that range from feature films and documentaries to national and local TV and news to 27 million feet of Hearst newsreels. We engage with the faculty and students on campus through symposia and events, building a future that is literate in media, archival practice, and history is crucial to this work. We are not an archive of note if we do not steward our collections and the future practitioners and scholars of today. So now that you've heard some from me, I'd like to give the floor to my colleague, Mark Quigley. Mark.
Thank you, May, and thank you everyone for joining us. The scope of the archive's collections date back to the earliest examples of film in the late 1890s, the birth of TV broadcasting in the late 1940s, and extends all the way to contemporary independent cinema. Each film and tape in the archive's conservation vaults has a story to tell. As archivists, curators, and educators, our goals are to collect, preserve, and share the entire spectrum of histories and her stories that fully reflect and embrace the diverse world we live in. Embedded in every frame of every work is a snapshot of our collective cultural history. Our goals and responsibilities in collecting are to ensure that as many frames as possible survive to be seen and studied, and to lead and assist in bringing everyone's stories to the fore. Service is at the core of all the work we do. Service to UCLA, to academia, and to the general public. A film sitting on a vault shelf doesn't come to life until it is seen. When films are preserved and brought out of obscurity through our access initiatives, good things happen. New histories are written, and previously undertold stories and diverse perspectives become known. With over 45,000 physical holdings, the UCLA Film and Television Archive is the second largest moving image archive in the United States. That's a big number, but what does it represent? Contained in the collections are historic newsreels, independent and community-based works, classic Hollywood studio libraries, and decades of local and network television entertainment and news programming. In the next few slides, I will share a few brief clips of works preserved by the archive in the hope of illuminating how impactful these collections and their stories can be. UCLA's Hearst newsreel collection encompasses 27 million feet of film. Donated with copyright to UCLA in 1981, the collection includes distributed newsreels produced from 1919 through 1967, as well as Hearst's telenews TV news footage produced from 1954 to 1962, which contains significant coverage of the civil rights movement. Now we're going to screen an iconic Hearst newsreel from 1939 featuring Marian Anderson. The historic setting of this concert was required when Anderson was barred from performing at Constitution Hall, which would not allow Black performers. Please note that the sound quality of this clip is the best we have available at this time.
The nation's most impressive Easter demonstration. 75,000 massed before Lincoln Memorial to hear Marian Anderson, colored contralto, make her capital debut at the great Emancipator Shrine. Refusal of the DAR to let her use their hall fanned a countrywide controversy, with this great gathering as the climax. The singer was invited by Secretary of the Interior, Ickes, who attends with Secretary of the Treasury, Morgenthau. Spectators include Supreme Court Justice Black, New York Senator Robert Wagner, and a host of notables. Here to listen to the voice acclaimed by many as the finest in a
That historic clip is one of hundreds of Hearst newsreel stories being digitally preserved in partnership with our key collaborators at the Packard Humanities Institute. The archive's motion picture collection represents approximately 160,000 unique titles. Examples from the collection range from landmarks in cinema history, such as Harold Lloyd's Safety Last, to important orphan works such as the late 1960s era UCLA student film pictured here, titled Behind Every Good Man. Made by Nikolai Ursin, this film, which I briefly alluded to in an earlier slide, presents a rare pre-Stonewall glimpse into the life of an African-American trans woman at mid-century.
I'd like to live a respectable life, that's for sure. I'd like to live a happy life. I want to settle down. I believe everybody wants to settle down. As far as marriage goes, I want a man that wants to go places, do things, make something of himself. You know the old saying, behind every good man there's a woman.
That historic film was preserved by the archive with a grant from the National Film Preservation Foundation. The archive's television collection represents approximately 132,000 unique titles, with another 100,000 plus programs in our off-air news and public affairs collection. Included in the TV collection are rare network dramatic anthologies from the golden age of television and thousands of news holdings, including rare footage donated with copyright from historic local station KTLA. In this KTLA clip from 1971, actor George Takei, and a survivor of the devastation at Nagasaki, denounced US government plans to conduct nuclear testing in the Aleutian Islands.
Mr. Takei, in view of the fact that the president has decided to go ahead with this bomb blast, what do you hope to accomplish?
I myself lost an aunt. We have some here who are the survivors of the bombing at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We feel very deeply and very personally the horror of the use of this bomb. Why test it if it's not going to be used? And if it is going to be, and that idea is absolutely inconceivable to us.
Mrs. Favitella, I understand that you're a survivor of the Nagasaki bomb blast. Tell me, why are you opposed to this particular blast in the Aleutian Islands?
Because I'm a mother of three children. I want when my children grown up have the nice home instead of all polluted. And if we keep using testing, there's no place for us to live and safely.
Does your husband share your views in this?
Yes, he does.
How about your children? What do they say to you? Are they concerned about this as well?
Oh yes, they are pretty strong about it And every so often I tell them about my experience. And even then, even I tell them they still no one can really feel what I feel. But I think everybody have to take my word too from survivors. That's the way I feel.
Thanks to 2 grants from the Haynes Foundation, you can visit our website to view more KTLA clips, including a collection of stories focused on LA Mayor Tom Bradley. The impact of the archive's collections and initiatives extend from lectures in UCLA classrooms to cinematechs and TVs across the globe. Vital archive partnerships with entities such as the Outfest LGBTQ Film Festival, the Film Noir Foundation, and the Sundance Institute bring rare collection titles to tens of thousands of screens annually. Archive loans of preserved titles screen nationally and internationally at repertory houses, museums, and festivals. Clips from the collection are seen in hundreds of documentary projects annually, with PBS's recent 5-hour series, Asian Americans, just one example. The archive's YouTube channel, which features hundreds of rare clips from our collection, has well over 1 million views. And last but not least, students and faculty at UCLA and from national and international destinations visit our campus study center to view rare materials. You will hear more details about these areas of impact in the upcoming sections of this talk. Thank you for your time and attention. And now I'd like to introduce our senior motion picture archivist, Todd Wiener. Take it away, Todd.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thanks for everyone for being here today. I'm going to briefly review the Film and Television Archive's conservation and preservation efforts, which are mission critical as a moving image cultural heritage institution. In addition to our administration, programmatic, and IT support teams located on the UCLA campus, there are over 25 UCLA archive staff members that usually work at our main Santa Clarita Preservation Campus location, known as the Packard Humanities Institute, STOA. Now that we are all returning to work, daily operations are ramping up to support all aspects of collection support. These efforts include the inventory work by the archive's intrepid collections team members that are our very first line of preservation defense as they inventory and inspect all new acquisitions in concert with the archivists. This initial triage of a new holding can potentially launch a worldwide search of other archives and institutions to determine if our holding is unique and potentially endangered. An international consortium of archives and cinematechs known as the International Federation of Film Archives, or FIOF, as well as the Association of Moving Image Archivists, known as AMIA, are vital support to these archival triage efforts. It is estimated that 50% of all films produced in the United States prior to 1950 have disappeared, and that potentially 90% of classic film prints in the United States are currently in very poor condition. Until 1950, films were produced using nitrate cellulose film stock, a chemically unstable and flammable material that eventually deteriorates and turns to dust. Thanks to the Packard Humanities Institute, the archive was able to move our extensive nitrate collections from our old non-climatized Hollywood vaults location to brand new state-of-the-art nitrate vaults on the FI's Santa Clarita campus. In addition to the vast Hearst newsreel collection that Mark mentioned earlier, a sizable portion of nitrate stored at the UCLA archives includes studio collections from Paramount Pictures, 20th Century Fox, Warner Brothers, and Universal Studios. There are 120 underground vaults for storing this decomposition-prone and highly flammable film stock. The vaults are kept at 33 degrees Fahrenheit and 32% relative humidity and have basically halted the rapid deterioration that we used to see in the archive's old Hollywood location. In addition to our own internal efforts to preserve orphan nitrate holdings, the archivist office and the collections teams work in tandem with studio archive teams as they pull and scan many of their nitrate holdings for long-term preservation, as well as release through home video, cable, and/or new streaming platforms. Some of our most famous major restorations from Nitrate Holdings include Becky Sharp, The Quiet Man, The Red Shoes, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, and most recently, Michael Curtiz's Dr. X, which was funded by the Film Foundation and just released on Blu-ray via the Warner Archive Collection. Now, when we have the opportunity to create new preservation elements on new 35mm polyester film stock, we can ensure these films will last several hundred more years once placed in proper archival storage. After 1950, more stable acetate film stock, or safety film, was utilized in film production. But sadly, it also deteriorates, giving rise to what we call in the industry as vinegar syndrome and/or irreversible color fading. As an example of this type of deterioration, here is a before and after still from the mid-1960s documentary short titled Queens at Heart. This early legacy project restoration focuses on interviews with 4 trans women, but also highlights the New York pre-Stonewall queer community. In this side-by-side comparison, you can see the terrible condition of our preservation source print, which was completely faded and had extensive damage like the tear you see on the left side of the image. The Archive's Queens at Heart restoration was funded by donor Joanne Herman with additional support from the members of Outfest, and it is an excellent example of a completely off the radar orphan film that would no longer exist without our vital preservation efforts. Now, as the television archivist, Mark Quigley oversees the digitization of many obsolete legacy videotape holdings, including 2-inch videotapes, a format that was used from the late 1950s all the way until the early 1980s. Shown here is an example of a rare surviving TV program on 2-inch videotape being transferred off a quadruplex 2-inch videotape recorder. These complex VTRs and their parts have not been manufactured for decades, and they require highly skilled engineers to repair and run the machines. Because many of these tapes are way past their archival shelf life, we work closely with the few remaining expert vendors that are still able to digitize rare formats such as this. Sadly, because blank videotape was expensive and the reels took up a lot of storage space, many programs were simply erased for reuse by networks and producers. Now, for the majority of the archive's 50+ years, we have been preserving using photochemical laboratory techniques to create new film elements directly from film sources. In addition to being prohibitively expensive, the problem with this labor-intensive photochemical workflow is that damaged and worn film sources with anomalies are often printed through in this process. With this example from our recent restoration of the Warner Brothers title, Mystery of the Wax Museum, we see an example of extensive damage on the 2-color Technicolor nitrate print that was basically the only source for our restoration. Now, thanks to advanced digital technologies, we now have the tools to go in and fix this terrible damage frame by frame. Again, huge thanks to the preservation funders and granting agencies that support these highly detailed and expensive restoration efforts. The Mystery of the Wax Museum restoration was funded by the Film Foundation and the Hobson Lucas Family Foundation, and it is also available on Blu-ray with commentary from the Archives preservation team, as well as Alan Rohde from the Film Noir Foundation. Now, while the archive is fortunate to receive funding to facilitate a few high-end digital preservation efforts each year from granting agencies, it's the smaller foundations and individual donors that allow us to preserve the many smaller orphan film projects, like the few examples you see here. Leslie Harris's 1992 film, Just Another Girl on the IRT, is currently being restored in partnership with the Academy and the Sundance Institute. The large Hal Roach nitrate film collection that includes all of the Laurel and Hardy and Our Gang comedies was gifted to the UCLA archive over 10 years ago and consists of many in danger elements that are deteriorating or damaged due to heavy use in mid-century television distribution. Thanks to a recent grant from the Louis B. Mayer Foundation, the archive has recently received funding to restore 2 of these in danger comedy classics. Another really special project to the archive is one we're working on is Haskell Wexler's The Bus. Filmed in the summer of 1963, this documentary about the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom captures one of the largest and most significant human rights rallies ever recorded in the US, drawing over 200,000 participants. In addition, we are currently wrapping up the restoration of the 3D noir classic, I, the Jury, thanks to funding by Mrs. Connie Elliott. And we are about to launch the preservation of early 1930s orphaned exploitation films, thanks to the efforts of longtime archive supporter, David Sten. To wrap up my brief overview of our preservation and conservation efforts, I would like to again acknowledge how these programs contribute to the global dissemination of our cinematic legacies. As Mark mentioned earlier, many international institutions and festivals screen the archives, restorations, and rare archival prints as part of their programmatic platforms. Festivals like the London Film Festival, the New York Film Festival, and TCM Classic Film Festival bring thousands of international guests together to celebrate our rich cinema history. In addition to public screenings, the archive's works can be seen on Turner Classic Movies, as well as many other burgeoning popular platforms like the Criterion Channel and Canopy. By saving and preserving these stories of all communities and proactively supporting broad access initiatives, the archive also supports a broad scope of equitable academic and educational efforts. My colleague, Maya Montañez Smukler, is the officer of our Archive Research and Studies Center on the UCLA campus. And she will talk about our preservation efforts and how they support research and education. Take it away, Maya.
Thank you, Todd. Wonderful to be here today with all of you. The Film and Television Archives Research and Education Department is the primary access point to the archives collection for the UCLA community and to a broad constituency of faculty, scholars, students, and professionals from around the United States and the world. Located in Powell Library, the research and education staff is charged with engaging in continuous outreach efforts, both at UCLA and at events local and beyond, to introduce researchers to the archive's catalog and to work directly with faculty and students on developing approaches to utilizing the collection for many different research topics across disciplines. The majority of the Film and Television Archives collection is non-circulating due to copyright laws and donor and depositor agreements. Digital access of collection materials is often prohibited. Therefore, most of the collection must be viewed on site by advanced appointment in the Powell Library Media Lab. Archive staff, with guidance from Library Council, continuously identifies collection materials with rights that might fall within the public domain or areas of fair use and could be made available to users as digital copies or hosted on the archive's website. There are some collections with rights that do reside with the archive. For example, as Mark has mentioned, the KTLA News collection and several parts of this collection have been curated and are available on the archive's website, as is the complete television series In the Life. So how do researchers search for material in the collection? The archive's online public catalog provides easy search capabilities for anyone with internet access to look up items by title, keywords, and credit listings. Research and education staff works closely with the motion picture and television archivists and the cataloging department to help maintain and update catalog records for effective public access use. In addition to the online catalog, my department creates study guides that are accessible online via the archive and library's websites. These resource guides are built around specific collections, for example, the LA Rebellion, as well as more general subject categories like early television, providing as many different access points for users to discover collection materials. The good news is that the Film and Television Archive does provide on-site access to the collection, and these services are facilitated through the Archive Research and Study Center, also known as ARSC. ARSC is overseen by the Research and Education Department and is located in Powell Library. During the pandemic, PAL Library has been closed, and so has ARSC. But during regular times, the Study Center provides daily on-site research support to a range of users, individuals who are both in and outside of the UCLA community, who visit the center to conduct research for class assignments, books, articles, dissertations, and commercial media productions, as well as viewing requests from the general public. All requests are viewed in the PAL Media Lab under staff supervision. Viewing collection materials is made available free of charge. The archive contributes to UCLA's mission of academic excellence through innovative and interdisciplinary campus collaborations. The School of Theater, Film, and Television historically has been one of the primary academic departments in which the archive engages. Currently, the archive is collaborating with the Cinema and Media Studies program on the current Getty Foundation Pacific Standard Time Science and Art Grant for our project entitled Science Fiction Against the Margins. The archive also works closely with the Department of Information Studies, Library and Information Science program, specifically its Media Archive Studies track throughout the academic year, participating in classroom presentations and overseeing student interns and student mentorships. The archive regularly works with other library divisions and affiliate libraries, such as the Chicano Research and Study Center and Library Special Collections, building synergy between moving image, paper, and photographic holdings, and introducing students, faculty, and researchers to the breadth of unique primary sources available across campus collections. The impact of archive research and education outreach efforts on public discourse around collection materials is well represented in our hosting of research-based symposium, which includes curated screenings and guest speakers. For example, we have co-hosted the Orphans Film Festival in collaboration with New York University. The program, This is the City, Preserving Moving Images of Los Angeles, showcased material from our collection contextualized by invited scholars and archivists from UCLA and other institutions. And 40 years of UCLA student filmmaking was an occasion to celebrate an institutional history of the university that included the participation of many alumni. One of the Film and Television Archive's most powerful points of impact is the publication of scholarship garnered from our collection. Every year, scholars visit the Research and Study Center, often visiting many times over multiple years, to produce books and articles that offer invaluable contributions to the field of media, cultural, and archival studies. These authors become a part of the archive's vibrant network of collaborators participating in public programming series, as guest lecturers, and as consultants on preservation projects. The archive is so proud of these works. They not only demonstrate the kind of rigorous and creative intellectual discourse taking place at UCLA, but they also best exemplify one of the Film and Television Archive's guiding principles to serve academia and the general public through the support and facilitation of educational and research efforts to access, utilize, and explore our collection. And now I will pass it back to May.
Thank you, Maya, Mark, and Todd. So no matter how you connect with the archive, either as a student, archivist, faculty, or avid moving image enthusiast, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. But wait, there's a little bit more. So before we jump into questions, I want to preview 3 upcoming programs that we'll have in our virtual screening room. Thus far, we've screened dozens of programs almost weekly since last summer. Over 10,000 visitors have watched films from as far as from our collection and from moving image culture as far as Macedonia, Cuba, Korea, and of course here in Los Angeles. Today, in just a few hours, you can watch a program around Sarah Mordor. You can watch a program around Sarah Mordor, considered the mother of African cinema. This is a virtual screening program that's co-sponsored by the UCLA Center for Study of Women and the Black Feminist Initiative, and includes a post-screening conversation with Muldaur's daughter and UCLA Cinema and Studies PhD candidate, and also the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television Associate Professor Ellen C. Scott. And next we have a split portrait of a drag queen, a documentary about self-described transgender performer, International Crisis. The archive is thrilled to present Split in a conversation with filmmaker Ellen Fisher-Turk and entertainer Terry Paris. That will also be introduced by Carrie Stoughton Jackson, a deputy director of Outfest. Finally, some television programming with Frankly Jazz on May 6th. The archive will present 3 recently preserved episodes of this obscure local music TV series featuring legendary artists such as Gerald Wilson, the Jazz Crusaders, and Sammy Davis Jr. You can watch these programs and more at the link in the chat. And now, time for questions. If you have questions for me or my colleagues, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of our screen. Let's get started. I'm going to open up the questions here and start at the top. What percentage and when is it decided to transfer footage to digital? I will hand that to my colleague, Todd.
It really involves a lot of sleuthing work that I talked about in my presentation a little bit. So we have to reach out to all our other archival colleagues and see if they have materials and if they have better materials. It involves a lot of curatorial work behind the scenes. So that's really what we kind of do, is the triage and reaching out to other institutions. So if it ends up we have an endangered best quality surviving element, then we would move that forward with digital preservation. That's a great question. Thank you for that.
Thank you. The next question, when will the Billy Wilder Theater screenings begin again? So we are embarking on continuing these conversations with the Billy Wilder Theater and the Hammer Museum, and have been so grateful for those collaborations of the past many years, and hope to continue that work. As we all know, there's a lot of regulations and also safety considerations for the archive to consider, and the Hammer Museum as well. And we hope that we'll be able to tell you more about that soon in the coming months. Thank you for your patience. And also, we do hope you'll be able to enjoy the virtual screening room while we're here. Are we able to intern for the archive as UCLA students? As a former intern of the UCLA Film and Television Archive some years ago, yes, we welcome students from UCLA and beyond to join our team. This is important work for students to be able to engage with collections, to have hands-on, work with the film. I remember one of the first times I saw nitrate film was the first time I saw nitrate film was at the Bridges Theater. And I think I got a text and someone said, come to the Bridges, there's nitrate film showing. And these moments and these experiences are so unique and special, and we want to make those happen for students. So please, if you're interested, you can contact us through our website, and hopefully as we're able to engage in hands-on training and experiences in internships, you'll be able to join us there. So thank you for that. Maya, did I miss anything on that front?
No, I think everything you said was perfect, May. We really look forward to campus opening, hopefully, in the fall, fingers crossed. So just to reiterate what May has said already, be in touch with us ahead of time and just check in and see what we're able to do considering the current situation. But it's such priority for us to engage with students and give students an opportunity to extend what they're studying or their interests, and to be able to give some hands-on experience and share our work at the archive with the next generation.
So the UCLA Film and Television we know ourselves as the second largest moving image archive in the nation. The first is the Library of Congress. And so a question was posed of what's the largest collection? And we stand alongside our wonderful colleagues throughout the United States and are proud to do this work. So we are very happy to be here and to be the largest moving image collection that's a university-based collection. So who's keeping track? All right. Is the Marian Anderson newsreel missing footage, or did it always show black screens at every splice between shots? Mark.
Todd, did you want to take that one?
No, go for it.
Okay. Well, I'll just answer it really generally that the most of the exhibited Hearst newsreels, once they made their original theatrical runs, they were returned to Hearst and most of them were destroyed because that was last week's news. So many of the restored newsreels in the archive didn't exist that way. They were reassembled. I know that the Marian Anderson newsreel was one that was preserved by us. It's a good question for our senior newsreel preservationists. The specificity of your question is very good, and I don't have the answer for that. But I would also like to comment, someone mentioned, someone chatted us that there was an offensive music cue in that Hearst newsreel. And it's really important to acknowledge that those Hearst newsreels are a really invaluable resource, not just for the stories they covered, but the way that they covered them. And there's a lot of bias in the Hearst newsreels of that period, and they're just rich for study for that purpose too. So thank you for that comment, it's appreciated. And if you want to forward your email to the Archive Research and Study Center, we'll get you more exact answer on that specific Marian Anderson newsreel.
I can add to that. Thank you, Mark. Basically, that newsreel was reconstructed from Hearst production footage. So they had the soundtrack of the original release and they had to match picture to the original soundtrack that they had. So of course, because of deterioration, there may be missing frames. So that's why you sometimes see the looping or the blooping. Thank you.
So sorry. How are faded prints restored, graded back to their original colors? Is this difficult to do, and how accurate are the restored colors to the original stock? Todd.
We rely on digital restoration software. So when they're scanning faded prints, they sometimes need to take the red completely out and enhance the blue, and then once it's in the digital restoration suite, make up for the lack of a certain color. Like if it's totally faded red, then they'll get that into the digital restoration suite and try to enhance the original colors. What we try to find is reference prints. So if an original negative is faded, we'll do our best to reach out to all the other archives and find a good reference print that we can match. That's how we try to get the original color to match what was the original intention. So, in some cases, like Queens at Heart, where the only source was completely faded, that's really up to our preservationists and the digital restorationists, and they work in tandem. They just try to get authentic to that period. And, there's a lot of discourse on how that should look.
There's a question of, can members of the general public visit the Santa Clarita facility? Right now, no. In fact, very limited staff can visit the facility because of safety concerns, and also, just ensuring that we are socially distant. In the future, it may be possible, but right now, this is not the case. So I will keep asking some questions here. Can members, sorry, they're disappearing as how do individuals and foundations, etc., get hooked up with orphan films? I can probably answer that. We actually have a lot of orphan films and materials from our collection on our YouTube page. And in addition to that, there's a tremendous amount of resources online related to orphan films. Wonderful colleagues who've been doing scholarship around orphan films. I would suggest, perhaps looking at the Orphan Film Symposium as a wonderful resource. And I think Mark maybe wanted to answer some of that, so I will give the floor to him.
Yeah, I'll just add that, sometimes orphan films are much shorter. They're produced on 16. They're less expensive to preserve. And so we'd love to hear from anyone that would want to take on, help us preserve any orphan films. And recent examples of orphan films that we've preserved through the National Film Preservation Foundation include The Savages, which is a film about, it's an ironic title. It's meant to be an ironic, provocative title, but it's about African-American neighborhood known as Ghost Town in Venice, California. And that's an example of an orphan film that wouldn't have got preserved if it wasn't for the National Film Preservation Foundation. But it's an affordable thing to take on if you have a foundation that's interested in doing preservation work.
We have a question. Can you discuss acquisitions, or do you only look to take for donations? However you want to support the work of the archive, either by placing archival collections in our holdings and working with Todd and Mark, we would welcome that as well. You can find information on our website to contact us if you have collections. We do get calls and interesting requests where folks might have nitrate film in their garage. We would love to take that material in and have a safe home for it. Todd, I see you leaning forward. I think you might have, nope, okay. But yes, please consider donating your collections and also supporting the archive. Are there any plans to offer public screenings at your Valencia facility? It would be great for the archives to be more involved in this local community. That is a great question, and one that before I even started was a conversation point between myself and colleagues. And I know that there's a vibrant community there with Cal Arts and the local community college, and we do hope to build stronger bridges with those communities because they have a shared interest and passion for film. So I can't answer that right now in terms of public screenings, but I can say that we are thinking about it, and I appreciate your question. Do you ever ship nitrate prints for projection in other locations? Yes. I can, there's actually a lot of questions. I'm trying to answer them quickly, but yes. Todd, do you want to add anything to that?
We do have a couple archival colleagues that are able to screen nitrate. It's a really arduous process to make sure a nitrate print is safe enough to go out and be screened. So we have a great collections team staff that goes through the nitrate print and does a shrinkage measurement at the beginning of the print, the middle, and the end, because they shrink differently throughout the way, because the way the film is wound on a reel, the nitrate might ship differently. And if it's over 1% shrunken, we don't allow it to be screened. So we take a lot of safety measures to make sure, or we do a lot of safety protocols to make sure we're shipping something out that can be screened safely.
Can you talk about the equipment used in scanning film and software and dirt fixes, stabilization, etc.? I'll hand that to Todd. And did you, sorry.
I mean, Mark does a lot of this work too, so I'm happy.
Yeah, sorry. I just, because of the what you were presenting has a specificity to that, but either of you, please.
Go ahead, Todd.
I mean, we really rely on our digital lab and some very special vendors in town like Roundabout and PhotoCam. So there's just a lot of great professionals out there helping with this work. Did I answer the question? I can't remember.
I think that the question is a bit specific for this forum right now, and maybe if we can either answer or type it in the chat, or hopefully you can find more information about the work that we do, also the technical work that we do on our website. That would be great. So thank you for that question. I have similar questions about Santa Clarita, so we hear you loud and clear. Do you have 16mm prints of films that no longer exist in 35? Yes, we do.
We do, and a lot of them are in the Packard Humanities Institute collection. There was a silent movie theater on Fairfax. There was a gentleman named John Hampton who preserved a lot of films. He was a huge silent movie fan, obviously, and preserved a lot of films to 16 millimeter when he was running that theater. And now those are the only prints in existence. And there's been a lot of preservation work between the UCLA Film Archive and the Packard Humanities Institute around this collection. And it's really important.
This is regarding a different medium, but as stewards of cultural heritage, I was curious about how you all feel regarding, regarding the recent news on the 2008 Universal Masters fire. Mark?
I'll just say that those kind of examples are why a cultural heritage institution like the UCLA Film and Television Archive exists. It's because you need a buffer for cultural history that's somewhat independent from kind of corporate control. And so if you wonder, why does UCLA collect so many studio films that they can't put online? That's one of the reasons, is to help ensure that material survives for cultural history purposes.
What would you recommend for the preservation of home movies and slides?
Well, if they're not going to go to an archive, I would definitely recommend storing them in a very cool, dry place in your home. But there's a lot of support around home movies right now, and you should reach out to, I'm forgetting
The Center for Home Movies has a tremendous amount of resources relating to home movie material. And when active in physical space, Home Movie Day is also a really wonderful event where you can go to the screening, and archivists like ourselves will be there to help walk you through your material and even perhaps watch it on screen. So I would recommend looking at Home Movie Day as a resource. The archive also collects home movies, and particularly ones related to Los Angeles and the film industry. So if that's something that you have and would like to talk with us about, we'd love to hear from you. So for all of you, what is your most treasured film in the archives collection?
Maya.
One of there's so many, so feels unfair to pick, but one of them is The Plastic Dome of Norma Jean by Julian Compton, which we just screened last week as part of our virtual screening room. And we were able to preserve that film with the filmmaker, and she was able to attend the virtual screening last week, and she's 92 years old. So I think that kind of experience of sort of bringing an older film to new audiences with the filmmaker is such a precious experience.
I think my favorite involves a mistake I made as an intern. So I'll share it. I think it was an intern or project manager for a legacy project, which was, I was working with the filmmaker for the Paris is Burning outtakes. Todd, you will remember this. We had pallets of outtakes from the remarkable documentary Paris is Burning shipped from New Jersey to the archive. And I was negotiating this and essentially did not realize there was not a loading dock at the then facility at the archive many years ago. And I get a phone call from Todd, who was so sweet, and said, we don't have a loading dock. And now all of the staff are unloading pallets of film on a hot day. And it was both hilarious and humbling to realize that I had made that mistake. But I look back on that as seeing it as a tremendous learning experience, and one that was collaborative and also, again, humbling. So that process was both fun, interesting, and resulted also in these remarkable outtakes being shared with the world of this, groundbreaking documentary. So Todd, I don't know if you remember that. I'm sure.
Oh, very well. I have a little coda on that, is because we saved those outtakes, and a lot of them were damaged because they were stored in a facility that was flooded because of a hurricane. A lot of those outtakes are now on the beautiful Criterion Blu-ray release that they just came out, I think 6 months ago or so. And because of our work, you can now see many of these archives on that Blu-ray release. And on that note, I'll say a personal favorite film in the archive is the wonderful documentary Times of Harvey Milk. And we restored that right around the time I started at the archive. So I got to take my dad to the restoration screening. And he was so proud, and I have a lot of fond memories of that screening. And it's a deeply beautiful film, incredibly moving. So it was an amazing experience to see that in a movie theater, completely packed movie theater. It's just a really special film if you haven't seen it. So
when Todd talked about videotape being erased, to save space, one of my favorite TV programs in the archive is Canción de la Raza, which is a public service telenovela from KCET in 1968. They did over 100 episodes, and to our knowledge, only one survives, and that's on the 2-inch video reel that we have at UCLA. So I've been very privileged to present that a few times, and to meet one of the real people that was there at the Chicano blowouts, Harry Gamboa Jr. So all these things are interconnected to the communities that we live in and that we service. So that's my favorite.
And if you love TCM, Dr. X will be on TCM Classic Film Festival coming soon, showing on May 7th. So look out for that. Maybe that will be your new favorite film from the archives collection. And there's more. What are you most excited about post-pandemic, either personally or professionally or both? I'm excited about seeing staff at the Phi STOA and having us work together to surface these amazing collections and to find the space that we've been in and learn from it to engage with folks from around the world in meaningful ways. I think now is a perfect opportunity for us to reflect on that. And so with change and struggle comes hopefully transformative work. So that is what I'm excited about. And I'm excited to work with this amazing staff and this beautiful collection. Maya?
I'm most looking forward to campus engagement. As I mentioned, I work on campus, and so really looking forward to seeing students in person. Have been engaging with a lot on Zoom, but really excited to see students come to the Research and Study Center in person and explore and really develop their research as part of whatever program they are in at UCLA. So can't wait to see you all.
I can't wait to get back in the theater and see movies with people again. I was really sad about the ArcLight closing, which is my second home after the Billy Wilder Theater. So I'm just really excited to see audiences in theaters again.
Same, and to see all my coworkers in person and actually be in the same office with my new boss, which I haven't seen in person for quite a while.
I think you heard my voice the other day, right? And we try to keep ourselves distant, but connected. And speaking of connected, we are so grateful for all of you for joining us today. I see that there's a lot of questions still, and I'm so sorry to everyone who we couldn't answer questions to. I'm trying to copy and paste them somewhere in case they're ones that I can respond to or the team can respond to. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Mark, Todd, and Maya. And we'll see you at the movies.